Hi, welcome to Gender Nebulous number 37 with me, Frida Wellis, and Victoria Hodges, and we have a special guest this week, Lily Rose Hunt. And hi, Lily, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
We're all right, thank you. I've been trying to get you on the podcast for a couple of weeks, and I know it's been really busy, so it's good to finally get around to it. First of all, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, you're based in Liverpool. But judging by your accent, you're not from Liverpool, are you?
No, I'm from
But
Warwickshire. I'm from
so because
Shakespeare.
I was saying I was saying to Vicky before, you've got to hear Lily's voice. She's got the nicest, cutest voice you'll ever hear.
So where you from, Lily?
I'm from Stratford-on-Avon in
Stratford.
Warwickshire.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So you're a student in Liverpool, aren't you?
Yes, I'm a second year sociology student at LJMU and I'm involved in other projects around the city as well.
Yeah. So can I ask you a couple about those other? I know you've told me about them, but just for the podcast and people listening, tell us a little bit about the projects you're involved in.
Yes, so I'm the chair of Spirit Level Transgender Support Group, which is the most established transgender society in Merseyside. We've been going since the early 2000s and we have a regular turnout of members of around 10 to 20 people. And we regularly have guest speakers in. I've opened the group with a lot more different guest speakers. So, for example, we've had Merseyside Police come in, we've had LCR Pride, we've had Access Sexual Health, the museums came in to do a workshop with us, we've had Dr. Adrian Harrop come in, we've had Health Watch, we've had all sorts of different organisations come into the group just to help to champion our causes. So I think that the support group that I run, Spirit Level, is very important because we meet
Mm.
up every second and fourth Wednesday of the month at the new university building by Lime Street Station. And it's great for us to have that kind of structure so that we can
Mhm.
meet up and be with one another and have that excuse to kind of get dressed
Mm.
up
Yeah, I
as our
think it's
people
great.
identities and socialize with like-minded people. And then we usually go out for a drink afterwards as well, which is even better. Well, I usually go out for a night out.
Yeah, I'd
Hey, any
noticed
excuse, any
there's a lot
excuse.
of lovely pictures of Lily on Instagram at the various Liverpool establishments.
So is that the Spirit Level Transgender Support Group? Is that something that's online as well as being in a kind of physical location?
Yeah, so we have a social media presence. We've had a group on Facebook for over 10 years, a private members group, which I am now the admin of. But I've also recently appointed some moderators from the group because we've had someone who's been a long-term member of the group misbehave on several occasions,
Oh gosh.
not be very pleasant. So I've had to appoint some moderators to kind of rein
Mm.
her in and moderate her behavior, etc.
Yeah.
And also, we've recently started making a website, but that needs a little bit of work done to it. It needs a bit of a tidy up, which LCR Pride are going to help us with. We've recently joined Twitter and Instagram. I got myself locked out of the Instagram account, unfortunately, because for some reason it just got rid of me from it, and then I couldn't log back onto it because I forgot the password.
Oh gosh.
I know.
What a pain!
And they have the two-factor authentication now, so it's quite difficult, isn't it?
I
To
tell you, having to remember all these passwords, it's a nightmare, isn't it? I mean,
I know it can be. I might as well just make a new Instagram because we only ended up having like 100 and something followers, but it was still
mm.
good. Like it was still a good number, considering how niche we are as a group.
Like I think these like local meetups and like outreach groups, they're really important because like even like I'm based in Manchester and Bolton, and I work in the LGBT Foundation, and there just doesn't enough of things like that because in big cities you obviously get that kind of thing, but I think for people that aren't so well connected or they feel a bit alone, it might be a first point of contact with people who are trans or non-binary or on the LGBTQ spectrum. So I think it's brilliant work what you're doing,
so
and
can anybody just come along and join in? Is it kind of it's open
Yeah,
to all?
yes, it's open to all. Anyone can just come along and join in. The numbers vary. They're like at the last meeting, because I only put the details on 24 hours before. We only had a handful of people show up, but that
that's
the meeting with Dr. Harrop, we had 14 people come, so the whole table was full. So it just depends on various factors like the time of year and whether we have a guest speaker in, etc., or how many people turn up. But we do usually always have a solid base of people who come. I think it's good how I have been able to modernize and broaden the base of the group a lot more because when I was talking to the last chair of the group staff, she told me that when she was running it, she wouldn't have been able to have done what I had done, as in opening the group up so much more and kind of modernizing the group, because she comes from that older generation of trans. Whilst I want to try and reach out more to younger people. So
Yeah.
we're getting some leaflets made for us soon from LCR Pride Foundation, because we recently got a grant from the National Lottery at the end of last year, and that money is towards making us leaflets, business cards, proper banners, and then I can put the leaflets around the different university commons areas and cafes to try and bring more younger people in and hear those perspectives and different opinions, because I think that would be really interesting and enlightening for us. And also, I think it's good how I have opened the group up more to make it not so much of a clique and so much of an exclusive group, because although we do only kind of cater to a small number of people naturally, 0.5% of the population or less, we are trying to broaden our base more by having all these guest speakers in. Yes, the guest speakers have been predominantly cis, but that's just because cis people make up the majority of the population and are more likely to be in those leadership position roles who would come in and speak to us who run these organizations. But we have broadened our base up a lot more to the wider LGBTQ plus community. So, for example, a lot of the people we've had in, such as Dr. Adrian Harab, Chris Hubbard, Andy Herring, Matt Exley, they're all part of the gay community, and Rachel Gaskell as well. They're all part of the G community.
Are they part of the people that on Liverpool Pride?
Yes, so Matthew Exley is at the Museum of Liverpool. Andy Herring is the CEO of LCR Pride. Dr. Adrian Harrop, he runs Brownlow Health Group. He's a GP practice there. He doesn't run the whole group, but he runs the kind of trans services at the group. And then Rachel Gaskell's the social prescriber there. So they all have their own kind of different roles. And Chris Hubbard, he's now the director of LCR Pride, and he also runs a trans advisory group meeting at Merseyside Police, which I've been to before, and it's really good. It's a really good way for us as a trans community to put our views forward and be listened to and be heard seriously, because we see such as the hate crime statistics, and then see like what's happening with hate crimes and how they have gone up towards our community since the recent cultural backlash.
Could you just talk about LCR Pride, Liverpool City Region Pride, and do they work with Liverpool TDOV? I know it's TDOV coming up on the 31st of March. So do you have any events kind of planned for that weekend?
Yeah, so LCR Pride have collaborated with Liverpool TDOV for quite a while. It started when Imogen Christie, who was a wonderful trans lady who kind of led the trans community forward and pushed our visibility a lot more within the city. She kind of collaborated with LCR Pride and National Museums Liverpool to push Liverpool TDOV, and that started in around 2017.
It's been going a few years then.
Yeah, so it's been going for a few years, but she sadly passed away in 2021. She was a driving force behind trans activism in the city and Liverpool TDOV, but then they were looking for someone else to take her place. And at that time, I was just kind of finding my feet within the community, because I first kind of met the CEO of LCR Pride at the Navajo Award ceremony in 2021, even though I started on the community panel there earlier that year after being inspired by being in one of THM, Trans Health Merseyside's meetings, who meet every third Tuesday of the month at City House. And that meeting was over Zoom because it was still during the pandemic. And then I was inspired to start getting involved more in the community then to try and make a difference. And then I just kind of put myself forward for leading and running Liverpool TDOV because somebody had to do it. And then I thought, well, I think I could be the right person for this because I've studied various different subjects at college. I've studied beauty therapy. I know they're not all directly related.
So have you got any kind of special events you're going to be doing for TDOV?
Yes.
She's inviting me over.
You're nice. Going. So what are you doing there, Frida?
Well, what I was gonna do is bring some stuff from the LGBT Foundation, like do a workshop, maybe just about talking, because my whole thing is like coming out at work, and because I've been through that.
So are you going to be doing some panels where you can like interview people.
That was what I was thinking. We've discussed it a little bit, haven't we, Lily, about what we can do? But
Yeah, we've discussed it. So there's going to be a big program of events. This is definitely the most dynamic kind of program of events that TDOV has ever known within the United Kingdom, and quite possibly the world as well, because we are having, and this program of events, it starts on Thursday, the 30th of March. There's going to be a flag raising event at the town council city hall, with councillors there to kind of raise the trans flag up.
that'd be great.
To help to advocate for our community with the council and change lawmakers and policymakers' decisions to.
I think it's going to be like just to interrupt you there a bit because it's related. It's just I think it's going to be a very, you know, it's very poignant year because of what happened earlier in the year with Brianna Jai, and I think a lot of people came out in support then. And I saw what happened in Liverpool. They were just hundreds of flowers and candles, and I saw some of your pictures, Lily. It just looked amazing. And I think that GCs and turfs they like to say, "Oh, the tide is turning." Well, it is turning, and it's turning in our way. Because I think the general public, when they see the work you do, and when they like say, and the little bits of things that me and Vicky do, and like they think they can see that we are positive people. We're not like trying to take over anything. We're not trying to demand rights. We're just people that want to live happy, kind of fulfilled life. You know what I mean? And I think that's what people see when they see us, or when you're involved in these groups. You just want to help people who are in that community, and I think that's really valuable because obviously you were saying a little bit there about beauty. And because like I remember going to like trans kind of group when I was younger, there used to be a trans meetup, but it was mainly for guys that was secretly dressing up behind closed doors. It wasn't really like anything to do with being trans, and I thought, oh, this isn't really for me. And it was like, and they used to share beauty tips and stuff like that, which is fine, But I think we've kind of moved a bit further forward, and people are thinking more community based.
Definitely, because Spirit
You were
Level.
talking about the older kind of trans community, weren't you, earlier?
That's what Spirit Level used to be like. It used to just be a cross-dressing meetup group.
Yeah, I kind of
had a conflict with a member of that group who's a bit older than me. She's in her 60s, and not full time because she's married, and I think she wants the group to go back to how it was before, when it was like a secret cross-dressing meetup group, even though she gets involved in bits of activism herself.
But you see, this is the conflict I have, you see, because like obviously when I'm at the LGBT Foundation, there's a lot of really young people there, non-binary. It's a very sort of dynamic group. It's intersectional. But it's like I'm also involved in like a fetish scene where people go, and I know it's kind of like a totally different thing altogether, but it is like a community because the people that go to that space, it's a safe space for them to express whatever it is they need to express. They have their little community. And both things are important, and I think there's always been that. It's like have you heard of Sparkle?
Yes, I went to Sparkle last year. Actually, I had a great time there.
Well, me and Vicky went to Sparkle. We met Ginny Lemon, didn't we?
We met Ginny Lemon. Yes.
See, Sparkle has always been one of those things I'm conflicted about because on one hand it's a great community event. It's kind of like a trans pride thing, but it's also a kind of like meet up for like. What you would say is
they did. It's funny you should say that because they did have in one of the local hotels that has a kind of a big bar in it. They had a first timers meetup place in there. I mean, they were giving free drinks, I think, as the way to get people to come along. But myself and a friend went to it. We didn't know what to expect, and it was very much like what you're describing with kind of focused on cross dressers, and it was kind of how to bring them to the event safely through this bar event and then walking through the street together. So it was I don't know, it was interesting.
I think but
there wasn't much focus on like trans issues. It was kind of more of a
definitely. So I felt a little bit out of place there because when I looked around me, it was all kind of like older cross dressers, and I kind of felt like I didn't really fit in that well there. I didn't really.
You have to be. Oh, sorry to stop. You just have to be careful though, because I would never shame anybody.
Oh no,
like that.
No.
You know what I mean?
I wasn't shaming anyone.
No, I'm not saying you were, but we've got to be careful here that we don't sound like we're saying that's them and this is us and we are better than them. You know what I mean? Because it's easy to fall into that and go, because you know, you see some of the state when you're on a night out, you look at the state of her.
No, I think both things are completely valid. It's just like you don't know what you're walking into. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think it's
So
just
like in terms of like trans community groups, they are these kind of strange worlds that we find themselves in. It's like the trans dating scene is really weird because you're meeting guys that are just there to meet trans women or somewhere on that spectrum. So they're all like weird chaser guys, So I'm sure you've encountered that, Lily. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes these meetups they can be a bit intimidating for younger people.
I agree with that. I actually do most of my dating and hookups through Grindr.
Yeah, me too.
Because I think with that being like more of a fetish and LGBTQ plus app and not like so heteronormative like apps like Tinder, which I was banned from, Grindr is better for someone like myself, and I'm sure for a lot of other people within our community. But it's not really the best for dating. I think dating as a trans woman can be really difficult
Well,
because
yeah, because on one level, guys are sort of attracted to you because you're trans. But then on another level, you think, well, that's not you know what I mean? It's hard to meet somebody who's unless you're just there for the hookup and it's just simple.
Well, I've just learned to be there for the hookup because I used to want to have a boyfriend when I was younger. Because I would see like my friends in high school getting boyfriends. But now that I'm a bit older and not so influenced by peer pressure, I'm fine just to be there for the hookup at the time being.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
What about you, Vicky?
Yeah, well, I've kind of avoided the dating scene completely since I came out. I've really I have like deliberately avoided it because I've been kind of focusing on myself.
Yeah.
I just not really had time to think about, relationships and that kind of that side of things.
Well, I think what we should do, me, Lily, and you.
It's beginning to feel like it's time to, put my toe back in.
Have a night out in Manchester, and when we're not working, and it's purely just for.
Yeah, definitely. I went out. I went to Manchester for Pride as well last year, and I had a great time at Pride. I loved watching the parade, but it was a lot different to the Liverpool Pride because Liverpool Pride is just kind of like a march. It's more grassroots and community focused.
Yeah, it's more community based.
Manchester one is a lot more commercialised.
Yeah, the main Pride is very commercialised, but the thing we went to, the Sparkle event, that wasn't. I don't think that's quite as.
No.
Commercialised. It's got all the events going on in the park there, which was it was fun. They had a stage there.
I had more.
Jimmy Lemon was there. It was
good. Well, the thing is with Sparkle, it's much more relaxed, and I think it has a much more family kind of feel to it in a way.
Yeah, it was very relaxed. It was good.
Yeah, there were people there, with the children just running around, and it's just chilling. Like, obviously, like with Pride, because it's got so big, they have to kind of crowd manage it quite a lot for it to be safe. And I think it's sometimes things become a victim of their own success, don't they? So they get really popular, and then suddenly they have to start putting security on, and it can feel a bit oppressive.
Very true.
Well, you have to pay to go into in the march, don't you? I mean, you can't just it's way too commercialised.
I think Lily, a friend of mine, Joss Pryor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's well, see, I'll actually say she's a friend. I've not met her yet. She's a friend online, but every time I say I'll come to Liverpool, and I never get around to it. So yeah,
I like Pride, but they don't really get involved much with the community here. Like they don't go to any of the groups. And even though I know of them from Twitter and I've met them before in Lisbon, I just don't really see much of them because I think they're more online activism based, which is great. But for me, I'm more about kind of being there in person.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. So that you just mentioned the word activism. Frida and I, in our previous podcast, we've been talking about what kind of activism we do, and what's the kind of more effective type of activism. I mean, I think we came to the conclusion that all activism is good, but each of us should do what we're comfortable doing.
We have talked about like there's some
whether it's something serious or something kind of really of easy to do, because I do DRM stuff, which diversity role models, and that's just like online. You talk to, teachers or students just about yourself, just a 5-minute kind of intro thing, and that's kind of a really low level kind of activism. But and then you can compare it to some kind of the stuff that goes on in the streets. I mean, where do you kind of sit on that kind of activism thing?
I would say I definitely fit somewhere in between that. Because My kind of activism isn't so much going in the streets with a massive megaphone, marching,
That's
and doing
mine.
That's
music.
Frida. That's Frida does the megaphone stuff. Yeah.
My kind of activism is networking with people who can help us, such as LCL Pride, National Museums, Liverpool, with universities, those kind of organisations, and sitting down with them and promoting our cause that way. Because I think it's far more effective to work with people, cross collaborating and being intersectional, rather than making people think you're some kind of screaming lunatic.
Well, I'm definitely the
Yeah, that's
screaming
Frida. Yeah.
lunatic variety. You see,
So
my
Frida's about, pink, blue, and white bricks and stuff like that. So yeah,
I
and
still
megaphones.
respect that in some ways, though, because I know that's how Stonewall started, and if people didn't rise up in that way, then
well
I don't think it would be today.
that was like a breaking point moment, wasn't it? I
It
think,
was.
and that to me, it's not necessarily activism. It was just like people just couldn't take anymore
Yeah,
because
but it
things
was
were so
appropriate at that
extreme.
time to do that, wasn't it? I
Yeah,
mean, I think
yeah, but I mean,
your activism is based on what you're trying to achieve as well.
yeah,
Definitely.
it's
Yeah,
that obviously it depends on the mood of the moment as well,
Yeah,
because some I'm sure those people at Stonewall didn't think, right, what we're going to do is this, and we're going to do this at this time, and then we're going to do that.
and
They
then we're going
just
to have a barbecue. No, they're not.
It was
They
just
weren't
a
thinking about that.
riot.
Were they?
It
It
was
just
just a.
happened.
But the
yeah,
way
that,
I do, I think creatively about protest, and I think about because, like, when people look at the pictures afterwards, and everything's a visual culture now, it's about that visual impact you can have by doing something. It might just be a simple gesture, or it could be something extreme, but it's whether that message carries through to the public or not. Because when the public see it on social media, that is kind of what that is where it comes from, isn't it? That's where people get their ideas of
See,
what they
I
want.
love Cabaret Against the Hate Speech. I love what they do.
Yeah,
The song and dance
yeah,
protests.
in
They've been doing
Glasgow.
a lot of that in Glasgow. I really enjoy
I definitely
working
think
with.
that sometimes street activism is appropriate. Like last year, I think there was some street activism here in Liverpool over the GRA reforms,
Hmm.
or
Mm.
it might
Yeah,
have
there
been
was in Manchester too.
it might have, I can't remember exactly what it was over, but it was over something. I think it might have been excluding trans people from
Yeah,
the ban on conversion therapy.
yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
That was last year, and there were people who were marching on the street about that. And I think in times like that, yes, it is appropriate to kind of have that activism and to march, because if you don't do that, then you're not putting your case forward as much. Because since then, the government have said that they are going to include trans people in the ban for conversion therapy. So sometimes you actually have to take these more radical measures to get somewhere.
Yeah, so maybe
Yeah,
that kind of
it's
protest that happened at the time helped to, bring that about. Yeah.
Yeah,
mm.
perhaps.
it's good to protest because you've got to protect that right by because if you don't use it, you lose it, kind of
Hmm.
thing. So we have a government now that literally don't want they want to outlaw protests and noise in the street. So the protest against that is obviously create noise in the street. It's like
Yeah.
because I was looking like if you look at the way other countries do activism, like the French, they didn't they spray the walls of their government with manure or something.
That sounds
I'm
like
not,
something they do. Yeah.
not that I'm not suggesting you do that, Lily. You
No,
obviously,
I'm a
But
bit.
we've seen people spraying orange paint on 55 Tufton
yeah,
Street. Things like that.
yeah.
I mean,
That
it's
that.
effective in its own right, but I think you've got to pick and choose what you're doing, haven't you?
So if push comes to shove, Lily, you'll be in me a trans militia.
See, Frida wants to buy a tank, and she wants to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, like, have you heard of the pop group, well, dance group KLF?
I don't know.
No,
No,
I've
no
not.
problem. Well, they used to stage these kind of things, and I love anything like that. It's like a really big visual impact, but actually, it's not like it's all kind of orchestrated in a way. It's not happening by accident. It's all like planned, pre-planned.
When you think about Liverpool, it's always kind of been more of a radical city, because it has different views,
That's true.
than the rest of England, really, and it's always been a bit of an outlier. So it's
Well, I
not
think yeah, that's
surprising
true because
that the city is a bit more open and welcoming for trans people than other parts of England, which aren't at the moment.
well, Liverpool's always been more militant towards the Westminster and
Mm.
Fleet Street media because obviously they ban the Sun. That you don't see any Sun. You still see the Daily Mail, but they're very much. It's like Liverpool kind of exists in its own political climate, but that's
Yeah.
why it was kind of scary when we saw that. The asylum seekers hotel
Mm.
when there was the protesters outside there. Because you would never see that kind of thing in Liverpool in any other time. Because I think Liverpool's always been more outward looking, and people that I know in Liverpool tend to be all left wing.
Yeah, that was scary. But then I think there's parts of the city outside of the city centre which are less diverse and can be a little
Mm,
bit less outward looking. And then I think that some people, particularly who live in communities which they feel have been left behind, can feel that their problems, their day-to-day problems, can be caused by, they've been
mm,
led to believe by the newspapers that migrants are the causes of all their problems, because the
yeah,
government want to try and push this cultural narrative towards certain sections of the working class where they want to turn them against trans
exactly.
and
Yeah.
migrants, because they feel that
This,
that divide and conquer will work for them like it did in America. But I don't think it's going to work the same here as it did in America. And I think it's just going to lose them support.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was
yeah,
something on your Twitter
true. We've
um,
seen. Oh,
where you put some pictures about street ads, open media, trans positive street ads. I thought
Yeah.
that was really interesting because there was lots of pictures of really positive messages on giant posters in the streets. So was that something you were involved with or just kind of on the fringes with?
So I'm friends with the lady who is the chair of Homotopia, which was the driving force
Okay,
behind.
Homotopia is it called?
Yes, it's
it's a
Homotopia.
festival, isn't it?
My what I'm doing with TDEV is actually is doing something quite similar, because today I sent some funding from our group to LCR Pride Foundation, because they're funding some billboards for us around the city to help to promote TDEV
Right.
as well as online marketing. But I do think that those billboards from open media were really important because, for example, at the end of January, I was going to Exeter to go and visit a guy there who I'd met on an online dating app.
Oh,
And then I was just sat at Lion Street Station having my lunch, waiting for my train. And then on the billboard opposite, Sky News flashed popped up and said, transgender rapist sent to mail prison or something like
Mm.
that as the main story. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they've just called someone a transgender rapist. Like, that is
yeah.
so offensive. So then I
Well,
literally
that was
got
going
up
on
and
all day.
I spoke to the security guards about it, and I said, that's really offensive. Like, I don't know how they can get away with that kind of language. And
Mm,
then we can't do anything about it. You'll have to talk to the help desk. So then I got up to the help desk and spoke to them about it. And they said, we can't do anything about it because it's from an outside news agency and we have nothing to do with that, which is fair enough because it was different stories that were popping up on that billboard. It
Yeah.
was just the initial shock for me to see that headline. And then there was a guy there and he said to me, oh, you're very pretty for transgender. I was like, so transgenders held at a different standard to cis women then. That's not really very nice. But even though it was a compliment towards me, but it was a bit of a backhanded compliment. And then I
bit of a
got my
weird one, isn't it?
yeah, and I was shocked to find out the BBC had the same story on as well.
Oh, the BBC are not are complicit in all of this. They know. I mean, the BBC recently have been some of the worst. Yeah,
uh,
it's interesting what you were saying though about that though, because like if I was to put a billboard up, as an organisation that was pejorative to a group, that would be illegal. But if a railway station can just flash whatever news it wants, and word it any way it wants. So was the billboard thing a reaction to that? Um,
I think it was probably a reaction to that from Homotopia. I don't know for
yeah.
sure, but as far as I'm aware, it probably is.
Mm,
Because people would be unhappy about that. And the billboards for TDAV are just to kind of raise awareness. So drivers passing by and people can see and attend the event. But then sometimes I think that higher visibility can be a little bit of a double-edged sword, because I find the current debate around trans people on Twitter to be quite toxic, to be honest, because I just think that it's so polarized
it
between
is.
gender criticals and the trans rights activists that it's just really, really polarized, and it can be too negative and
Well,
toxic.
yeah, I think
Yeah, it can be. Mm.
Yeah.
I was saying to Vicky how we got talking, didn't we? Because we were in these chat spaces together, and they were so toxic. I mean, I recorded some of those because I just feel like those Twitter should be held to account for the content it's providing, because you could argue, are people allowed to say what they want in a private conversation, but this is not a private conversation. Twitter are making money. out of this conversation because, you know, if users sign up and they provide content, you're subscribing to, you know, the platform, and then they're amplifying it. So Twitter needs to know and be accountable for the things that are said, because there are some people on Twitter. To me, it's never been a matter of free speech. It's a matter of who has the most power, because some people have more followers than others. Like there are accounts on there with millions of followers could start a Twitter space and invite people to say abhorrent things on it. And
No,
they,
I agree with that. Everyone's kind of got their own agendas because even though when I came out as transgender back in 2015 when I was in year 11 in school, I had some very ignorant comments made towards me. Like I remember when I wanted to first start dressing as a girl, deputy head teacher called Karen, ironically, said to me, people on the streets might say things to you. Parents might tell their kids to stop talking to you. Like kind of put me off from coming out as myself.
You were really young when you came out.
Yeah, I was 15 when I came out as myself, but she might have just been saying that to kind of look after my safeguarding because people on the streets did unfortunately say some things to me at that time, being in a small town and with it not being as visible then. So that's why I think visibility and representation is really important to help to change those kind of attitudes that were stuck in the past. But back in those days,
absolutely.
When I would kind of get negativity and bullying and comments like that, there wasn't really any word for it. Like there wasn't the word gender critical or TERF then. It was just seen as transphobic or homophobic. There was no really word for it then. I think the first time I started hearing about the gender critical and the TERFs was when J.K. Rowling started saying what she was saying in 2020, and when that started to blow up. But before then, I didn't really know. Oh, when Germaine Greer back in 2015 when she said that trans women are not women. So it's kind of when that started happening. But back in 2015, I don't really feel that the gender critical movement, I don't really like calling them that either because I don't think they're critical of gender. I think they're just critical of people who aren't biological essentialists.
So I was going to say, you know, with the GC movement, it's got political legs now because it goes back, for me, it goes back to Brexit because the same people, the same lobby groups that wanted to make Brexit happen are exactly the same people that are pushing this kind of trans gender critical thing. There are a lot of smaller accounts that will not know this is going on, but people are just generally, you know, nasty anyways. But this just validates their opinions because there are powerful people willing to back them up. And I don't know if J.K. Rowling is part of that, but she's obviously part of the story. But when these groups like Sex Matters, LGBT Foundation, LGBT Alliance, and who else is there? You know, they're a bit like Christian Concern and all this. They're all coming from the same kind of place. And I think what's happened is they've seen that it can divide people. This is a way to get people arguing, and it can, and politicians can use that anger to sway votes. Because if you've got a fear, if you can say to people, if you vote this way, this is what's going to happen. You're gonna have trans women. You know, it's like this invasion narrative. Like trans women are suddenly going to be, you know, in places you don't want them to be. It's like, well, we're there anyway. So, what do you mean the world? You don't want us to be in the world? Well, it's like they'll talk about prisons, they'll talk about single-sex spaces, they'll talk about sports, and the reason they use those arguments is because they can find instances where sex kind of does matter a little bit, you know, maybe. But you can obviously have that debate, but it's not a debate that most people, you know, most voters are going to have. It's a debate that becomes performative and weaponized. So that's why I think you're seeing more of it. It's because
and don't forget we're coming up to an election year, so
you know,
it's being used as a, you know, political football wedge issue. You know, so it's
like even when I was in Manchester while Sparkle was on, like the news at the time was all about the Conservative leadership contest at the time, and I felt like all of the candidates were trying to outdo each other on who could be the most transphobic.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. Well, I mean, just wait until the election comes because they've already stated that they're going to do that again.
Well, when you looked at the ramping up of you know, the GRC vote in Scotland, the GRR reform, the whole momentum for that was based on J.K. Rowling's influence in the media, really. And
well, it was she timed the opening of that refuge, hadn't she, to kind of coincide with that perfectly.
Yeah.
To get the attention. Yeah.
I know,
exactly.
and I really don't believe that she opened that refuge at all out of the kindness of her heart. It was definitely used to stoke the first further division
Yeah.
that's in.
Well, we've not heard anything about it really,
I
have
mean,
we,
we've heard nothing
since?
since and nothing before, and it was just perfectly timed around that, you know, gender recognition reform stuff.
I mean, I don't want to get too into the details of that because that's the kind of thing we go on about all the
Yeah,
time.
we don't want to become
Yeah.
conspiracy
I also
theorists, but
think it's a little bit of a shame how the decent kind of One Nation conservatives like Theresa May, who started the Gender Recognition Act reforms back in 2017,
Yeah.
have been pushed out of the party and it's been taken over by the ERG reform extremists like Salora Braverman, Kerry Badenoch, all those terrible people who really don't like our community at all, to put it politely and to put it lightly. So
Well,
it feels
yeah.
like Brexit has happened. You're completely right, Frida, that the extremist wing has taken over the Conservative Party, and they're also scapegoating us more because they can see that Brexit has failed, and that people are struggling more at the moment due to the cost of living crisis. So they're looking to blame other people.
Yeah, trying to deflect the attention onto us, aren't they?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. But these people, they're power hungry and they can see a way to get power. It's like, it becomes like a point scoring exercise. It's like it doesn't really matter to them whether they're going to be able to send people to Rwanda or not. It doesn't matter if they can stop people coming over on boats. What matters is the optics. What matters is the photo opportunity. What matters is saying the right thing or what they think is the right thing on Laura Coomsberg on a Sunday morning. That's it. That's all it is. It's like government by lobby group. So like when I come along and I've been on telly and I've tried to get in the way of those conversations, it's really easy to do because they're really not. They don't really care about the thing they say they care about. So if you bring that to the table and say, look, this is the actual facts. Did you know that? Did you know this? And they don't. They just don't care about any of the facts.
Yeah, they just sound bites.
Yeah, they'll allow. I mean, Rishi Sunak. I mean, I don't know if whenever I see him on the telly, he looks like he's sort of connected by USB to some sort of government computer that just generates words.
I swear he's a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we see this is why you should be Prime Minister, Lily.
Yeah,
I don't know what political party you would stand for, but
well, I actually quite like the Liberal Democrats at the moment because I got an email from them the other day, basically from Ed Davey talking about how his father used to be part of their party and how the power of strong communities and social safety nets helped them and how cruel and divisive this current government is. And then I was watching some of his speech earlier today and I felt really inspired by what he was saying because he was calling for an end to this cultural narrative that we have at the moment.
We need to end it, yeah.
About doing politics differently, like bringing in proportional representation. So rather than a few kind of red wall seats and a few marginal seats where they think the voters are all bigots, having all of the rules, it should be everyone who kind of has that proportional representation, how everyone has all of the same voting power as everyone else. And I just liked what he was saying about doing politics differently and giving power to the hands of people and communities. So I don't think either the Conservatives or Labour really have the ideas for radical change at the moment, because even though I do think that anything would be better than what we have at the moment,
I mean, it's hard to see.
The danger is though with these smaller parties, they don't really have a chance of winning. So if you kind of vote for them and not Labour, the result of that might be the Tories stay in. So we kind of have to vote.
It's all broken, isn't it? The whole system.
We've got to get the Tories out. That's the priority.
But it's going to being tactical, really, because
tactical voting is what we need.
Yeah, that's very true. Because I don't really want to see either my vote going into being confidence for Keir Starmer, because I don't think that he has the interests of the trans community. And I think
no, but I think I'd rather have Labour in if it meant either that or Tories.
Yeah, same.
And then maybe later on we can bring in some of the other parties.
I think what the problem is, but for us and for other minority groups and for other people on the fringes, we don't feel like there's an alternative party. There's no opposition. The opposition often sounds like the people that are in power.
This is true.
So what happens is it takes somebody like Mick Lynch to say the things that the Labour Party should be saying. It takes somebody like Billy Bragg to say the things that should be being said to the TERFs. It takes somebody like Gary Lineker to say the things that should be being said to Suella Braverman, because there's nobody there on that opposite bench doing it. And that's the problem. Anyway, I got onto a political rant now.
We
I
went
didn't
down
want
the
to do that,
political
Lily.
rabbit hole now, didn't we?
This is Lily's floor.
Yeah, so Lily, let's get back onto your stuff. I mean, the conversation we just had really kind of ties into what we were saying earlier about activism and how we need to do more of it and effective activism and all that stuff. Yeah. So was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so for TDUV next weekend, we've got other things going on. So on that Thursday, we also have got the opening night party at Lovelock's coffee shop, where there'll be music and poetry performances
I can do some of that for you.
From the contenders of the UK's first trans writing competition, Prose Purple.
All right.
At Spirit Level have been running, so that will be really good. I'm looking forward to that.
So if anybody wants to find you, all these everything's on Twitter, isn't it?
Everything's on Twitter at Spirit Level Tran or at Lily Rose Hunt, or you can go on Facebook and search for Spirit Level Transgender Support Group, and we've got a website as well, so it's all online for people to find. And then on the Friday, actually the 31st, the TDUV day, I'm going to be doing some training with the City of Liverpool College about kind of staff awareness around trans issues, because I've been working closely with the head of student experience there, Andy Hargreaves, who is a really lovely person who wants to help to push wider acceptance for trans people within the City of Liverpool College.
That's great.
When I met up with him for a coffee the other week, he mentioned something really interesting about how a lot of the anti-trans backlash at the moment is similar or the same as what gay people had 10 or 20 years ago. And I remember that myself, because I came out as a gay boy 10 years ago before I came out as transgender. Maybe because it was a little bit easier for me at the time to express my true identity by being an effeminate gay boy than to come out as the opposite gender. So that was a little bit easier for me at the time. But that's why I think it's really good that organisations like the City of Liverpool College have that commitment to be on the right side of history and try and make an intervention to change things for the better. So I do agree with that, and I think that's going to be great. And he made a video of me just introducing myself, giving my pronouns, and I used to go to that college actually to do beauty therapy. So for some of the staff who know me and remember me from when I went there to see me. But I think it's a bit of a shame, to be honest, how I have been caught up in both the storms for the fight for gay liberation and now the fight for trans liberation. But to look on it on the brighter side, I feel I'm in quite a privileged position to have been part of both, really, because I've got to have seen gay marriage legalized, and I've got to have saw like the word gay not be used as an insult as much, and see gay people be more assimilated into widespread mainstream society. Whether that can be a good thing or a bad thing, that's another debate to have. But I kind of think that I'm going to see the same thing happen for trans people in the next 10 years or so. And we're all going to see that. We're going to watch that together. And I think that's probably why some of these hardline TERFs, like Percy Parker, are starting to get really desperate at the moment, because they know that they're losing the debate. Like, I saw her live stream last night when she was in Tasmania, and she was getting booed by everyone. Even the police were not on her side, and literally no one was on her side at all.
Well, she's agitating, isn't she? And the problem with her is, well, the problem I have with focusing on her is, I mean, yes, she is extreme, but she's playing a game, and unfortunately the game is up, I think, because when you try and be that person who is the poster person, but you have to be more extreme every time, and you have to keep doubling down. And there's only so many times you can do that. But there are people who are not as well known as Kelly J. Keane who have the same views, even worse. And they're probably working in this government that we have. But she's not working alone. Somebody's putting her in the media, because, like, when I've appeared on Talk TV and things like that, I know that they have a booking agent. They have somebody that is pushing her to be on, and it's the lobby groups that we talked about earlier. So I think that's why it's really important what you're doing, Lily, because you spoke before about your activism is about the community, and it's okay being on Twitter and mouthing off, and that's one way of doing activism, I suppose. If you're sharing information, you're sharing the correct information. If you're correcting journalists, you're showing where people are wrong. That's really good. But I think we also have to have that community thing as well, because without that, there's really nothing because I mean, sometimes it might feel like, oh, is it worth the effort? Are we getting anywhere? But I think we are. It's
We
just
are, but it's hard work and it takes a lot of effort, doesn't it? I mean, I
and
love what you're doing in Liverpool, Lily. I mean, those
Yeah.
organisations that you're involved with,
we have
it
to
all
visit
sounds
you.
really good.
Yeah, because if it wasn't for me, Liverpool Teed Up would not have our largest ever program of events. It's due to my interpersonal skills and networking skills, have been able to talk to the people who have the influence and the people who do matter to kind of push our community's agenda to the top and make us the focal point. And I'm not just in it for myself and my own ego, I'm in it for all communities. And I think
Yeah, of
that's
course.
really important that we
Yeah,
kind of have that pushback against the more prominent GC movement.
yeah.
Definitely, and it's about going it in the right way because I could put myself forward to talk on Talk TV, GB News, etc. But I don't think there'd be any point in me doing that because it would obviously be weighted and stacked against me. So I'd rather go about it, my activism in a better way by talking to the people who I'm not preacher converted, the people who would never change their mind to be accepting towards our community. I'd rather talk to the people who are already on our side, obviously, because they're more likely to push these events forward, but then also get through to the people who maybe have not yet decided which way they align with, whether they align with the BC
Well, yeah.
or it's about changing the public mood to be more on our side. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
No, it shouldn't have to be that way because I feel like that's like saying that we need to change the public mood to be more in favour of gay people or black people. But unfortunately, the reality is that's the position we're in at the moment.
Mm. Well, it's like when I've been
Yeah.
in on those TV things, I know that it's a bit of an echo chamber that world, because I know the kind of people that watch GB News and watch Talk TV. They have all sorts of abhorrent views. You only have to look at the comment sections to know that. But if I like getting in the way of that conversation, you see, because to me that's interesting, and it's like something that's like my little bit of protest and activism. But you see, if I was to go on to a program where they agreed with me and everything I said was applauded, I don't think that, that wouldn't be valuable either. So you've got to have some sort of a medium between
I
those
think you've
two.
got to have. I think we've come to the conclusion that you've got to have all these things, and it's up to kind of the individuals to do what they're comfortable with. I don't think I would go on TV either because I just wouldn't like to deal with the backlash afterwards. I mean, some of the stuff that Frida gets after she's been on those shows is horrendous. And I really appreciate the kind of activism you're doing. It's kind of more in line with what I do. But having said that, I would never say to Frida don't do that because I think it's really important that she's on there as the only trans voice sometimes. Against I know it's in a hostile environment and probably everybody watching and the people on the show are probably against her, but it is a real kind of form of protest in a way because you're standing in the way of it.
Also, it's quite easy to get on those kind of shows. It's harder to get onto, more liberal and more what would you say, more mainstream shows. But if I do those fringe things, maybe I can get a bit closer to the media circle.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, I do admire what you do in trying to break up the conversation within these toxic echo chambers, because I think it's important to have that trans voice and representation. And I might be interested in doing that in the future. I think just at the moment, I might be a little too young to do that because I'm more focused on other things like my university course and my social life.
You're definitely very busy.
Yeah, it's just because I'm too busy for those people.
You got super busy, and weren't you down at some horse race recently?
Oh yes, I was going to go to Cheltenham, but I didn't end up going.
Oh, you didn't go in the end.
I didn't go in the end, but I think I'm either going to go. Well, probably not next year because I'm planning on going to San Jose in California and
very nice.
to study a year abroad there.
Well, when you told me you were going to Cheltenham, I thought, is she going to throw herself under a horse in the name of trans rights with a suffragette scarf on or something? That would be amazing.
It'd actually be quite radical if I went to Cheltenham though as a transgender woman because I think Cheltenham is traditionally associated with not being very diverse because I'm from near the area where Cheltenham is and it's mostly like straight white middle class people. So
you could go and disrupt them, couldn't you?
Just to go there, I think it would be quite radical, but I don't think it would be a bad thing because I think it would just help like people to start talking and learning more. Because obviously, people would come up to me and talk to me.
You know, I meet people
Yeah, I
from
mean,
all
it's good
kinds
to it's
of
good to see a trans
places.
person in those places. You
Definitely.
definitely disrupt what's going on.
Yeah, so that's definitely on my bucket list for the future. But I've got bigger things in mind first, going to America.
So
I'm
what are you going to do in America? What's the America trip for?
well, I'm going because I'm studying a year abroad in San Jose of my sociology degree, which I'm really
Okay.
looking forward to. And then I'm going to be doing that from September this year till May next year. And then during the summer of 2024, I want to fly around different states, probably fly around visit mostly the more liberal states like on the West Coast and
Yeah,
East.
West Coast and East Coast, but not in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, don't go to Alabama.
Don't go in the middle bit. That's the thing.
We did a
No.
show recently about where we should go. You know, we've talked about places we should go, but yeah, we're going to do that. But we looked at a map, didn't we, that showed you that
There is a map that's just been released, an updated one that shows like all the West Coast is really safe, and most of the East Coast is safe. But like the bit in the middle is just like do not go, don't enter that zone if you can avoid it.
Well, at least I'll probably just be flying over those people.
Yeah, just fly over those places.
You'd be all right though. You get a few cowboys chasing you.
I know. Well, actually, I think the men might be more interested in me there because I heard on
You're gonna love that accent, I'm telling you.
for trans porn are higher in the more anti-trans states. I know.
Hey, lady.
It's like how when I go to Birmingham, I end up meeting a lot more like Pakistani Muslim men, and even though in their religion, traditionally in the Muslim religion, it's frowned upon to take part in what they would see as being a homosexual act, or even like anything that goes out of the rigid gender and binary norms is frowned upon. And sometimes people from those cultures like protest schools for having LGBT education, but
Yeah.
I'm surprisingly so popular with the Muslim men there. Like,
Well, that's typical of any kind of religious front. You know, you get that in the Catholic. You know, the Catholic protesters outside, well, Christians outside abortion clinics, don't you? But they're all, they're all up to all kinds of nefarious activities behind the scenes.
Yeah, so religion is another one of our hot topics that we talk about quite a lot on the podcast. You know, it's normally because the Pope said something unpleasant, and we have a go at them.
Liverpool's a very traditionally Catholic city, and I can find it a bit funny sometimes, like when I'll meet a Scouse guy who sees himself as being a bit of a rough and ready scally who like wears tracksuits, like has like a hard accent and thinks he's all everything, and then when he comes to see me, he will be really vulnerable and nervous because he's like, I've never done this before, I'm so nervous.
That's
like,
typical,
yeah. I can control them.
That's very typical of men, you know.
It's Catholic guilt, a lot of it as well, because in some of the culture here, like in the Skelly culture, they can look down on boys or men who they seem to be effeminate or gay. So for them, it's just they're putting a front on. But I just wish that guys, heterosexual men, did not have to feel the need to put on that kind of mask during the daytime and can just be their true selves without having to push heteronormative norms all of the time.
What's interesting though is the kind of guys that are aggressive and anti-trans on Twitter. They look to me a lot like the kind of guys that come on to me on Grindr, and I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same people.
Oh my God, exactly the same here. Like when I talk to the guys, sometimes I talk to guys on Grindr about like what's happening around trans people at the moment, and they're always really nice about it to my face, like, oh, that should not be happening, that's terrible. But then I think, why are they so nice about it behind my face? But then there's these same type of guys saying terrible things about it.
Because they feel guilty.
I know, exactly.
All that Catholic guilt.
I also think that sometimes it can be in some of these men's best interests to dehumanize us because the more that they dehumanize,
it comes down to basic misogyny, doesn't it? Because if they're on hookup sites, they probably think about cis women the same way. They probably call them sluts, and they probably call them all kind of pejorative, sexist names, but in front of them, they wouldn't say that, you know. Well, maybe they would, you know.
I think we should do a podcast on dating and these sites, shouldn't we? Get into the topic a bit more.
Well, some people might find me dating profile, and I'll be a bit embarrassed about that. Well, Lily, it's been lovely talking to you. So just before we finish, is there anything we've missed out that you wanted to say? If you wanted to say to anyone,
now's your big chance.
I've been talking to quite a few gentlemen who I've been talking to for a while, and I meet up with them regularly, and they actually treat me to the finer things in life to help to fund my life as a Liverpool socialite.
There you go. We see that's the way you do it, Vicky.
Yeah, so can you just explain that to me a bit more, Lily? How does that work?
So basically, I meet them through an app online, and then I discuss with them like what's involved, and then they'll like give me a gift that I want in
Mhm.
any kind of form. They give me some kind of reward, and it's really rewarding for me actually because the more that they give me these rewards and gifts, the more that I want to meet them and then meet more of them.
Well, you've got to be careful with that, Lily. Don't put yourself in any
Yeah, I mean,
tricky
you don't put yourself in any
situations.
danger, obviously, but
No, I'm
Mm.
very careful because
yeah.
although sometimes I can meet a few dodgy guys, I'm very careful about it, and I'm very into being safe and like making sure I get face
Oh
pictures,
yeah, I'm sure you are.
get all of the
I'm
information.
just saying, don't let anybody have any power over you by giving you
No,
presents.
no,
I've
I'm
I've
always
been in that
responsible.
situation where people are so, oh yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that, and then you feel guilty about it, and I feel, oh, sod you.
Definitely. Well, it's been lovely talking to you both.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really
Thank you
nice to
for,
have you come on.
and it was lovely to
Yeah,
hear about the projects you're working on, and I
doing some
want you
great
to
work.
know that it's very much appreciated. And I think it's great what you're doing, and I think you're just going to go strength to strength.
Yeah, and good luck with TDOR. I think that's going to be a great event. I think Frida's coming over to do something.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what,
yeah,
but
I'm going to come
Really
over
looking
and
forward
do
to
some
it.
stuff.
I think it's the best year for it really because it's the same year that Eurovision's on, and I'm hoping to get someone from the city council coming
yeah. So
to.
when is Eurovision? When's that starting?
Oh, Eurovision's in May. I'm really looking forward to it though because I think the atmosphere here will be
So
fantastic.
is there something you can do around that in terms of events?
Well, the only thing I'm worried about is just noise because I live right in the centre of the city, so that's the only thing I'm a bit worried
We
about.
could
But at least
do
The
we could
tickets
do
are
a
so expensive,
Eurovision
though, aren't they?
karaoke night where you go karaoke song of every winner from the last how many years.
well, I
Yeah, that
wanted to
sounds like
get
fun.
a ticket, but I didn't even get a chance to get one because they sold out so quickly. So
They
I
were
think
Oh,
so
it's so
expensive
good.
as
I'm
well.
going to book a
Yeah.
booth with me and some of my friends. And we'll probably just go to like a gay bar somewhere in the city because I don't really like Concert Square, the mainstream place to go out. I like to go to the gay area of the city when I go out because it's just a lot more inclusive and I generally
Well,
vibe better with like the gay man and it hasn't got like the same kind of feel about it as what Concert Square can have where you feel like you're in competition with other women and where the straight just see you and I just want to like kind
well,
of you.
I love Liverpool. I love Matthew Street, and whenever I go to Liverpool, I'm a total tourist for
Well, actually, I'm going
Liverpool.
to be in Liverpool in July because I've been invited to a hen night. So that's going to be my first night out in
Fantastic.
Liverpool. It's going to
I
be fun.
feel like a permanent tourist here, even though I've lived here since 2016.
So I'm definitely going to be speaking to you about Tea Dove and anything you want me to do, help you with that. And yeah, so thank you, Lily.
You're
And I'll
welcome.
let you get on with being a socialite and being beautiful and whatever it is you do in an evening.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
All right, bye for
Yeah.
now.
So I shall sign us off there. Please subscribe. Please like. Please
Oh
come
yeah,
back
don't
and
forget to
watch again.
subscribe.
And at the end of the show, we always do the little song. So do you want to join in?
Right, so you go. I'll count in. We just go. Don't forget to subscribe. Vicky can
So
never do
so
it, so
Lily,
don't
you
worry.
can join in if you want.
So yeah, 1, 2, 3. Don't
Don't
forget
forget
to
to
subscribe.
subscribe.
Never works.
Never
That's
works.
the beauty of it.
Sounds
Well,
terrible. That's why
if
we
we
do
ever
it.
get it right, that's when we stop doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got to try. I've got to
Okay.
try, haven't you?
So bye bye everybody. Thank you.
Mwah. Mwah.